Now, you might be thinking, hey, this Timeleaf is really neat, but I really need JSPs. Something like Timeleaf is way too advanced for my organization. We have lots of existing JSPs. So can I do this with Spring Boot? Yeah, no problem. It's just as easy to use JSPs, or almost as easy. What we need to do is place the JSPs in a web relative location instead of that templates folder. And then we have to set some specific properties that are used to customize Spring Boot, specifically a Spring View prefix and a Spring View suffix. And then I need to remove the Timeleaf starter POM, and I also need to exclude the Spring Boot starter Tomcat because I don't want that to get in the way. So let me go ahead and show you what this looks like. So back here at my application, I'm going to do a couple things here. First of all, I have a source main web app folder. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder called webinf because we usually like to use a webinf folder if we're working with JSPs. And I'll create a new folder called views to hold my page. Now I'll take my hello HTML and I'll move it to the views folder, and I'll change the extension to JSP. All right. Next, while I'm here, I'm going to get rid of this span here. I'm going to go ahead and, if memory serves me, this is just going to be a placeholder like this from a JSP page. I'll save that. And then what I'll do is I will remove this Timeleaf dependency because I don't need it anymore. I'm also going to do something that doesn't quite make a whole lot of sense here. But let me see if I can explain what's going on here. I need to specifically tell Spring Boot that it does not need to bring in anything related to Tomcat. And the reason is because I am actually going to be running inside of a container based on the earlier change that I made. So I'm going to say that the Tomcat dependencies are provided. And this is going to keep them from being provided to the web container, which is going to prevent me from having any conflict when I actually run this. Now, the other thing I need to do is I need to set the prefix and suffix in order to cause my hello page to be found. Now, whenever I have application properties that I need to set in a Spring Boot application, there's a number of ways that I can do it. But following the opinionated approach, Spring Boot is going to look for a file called application properties automatically in the root of the class path. So what I'm going to do is add a few properties here. Spring View prefix, and the prefix is going to be /webinf/views. So this describes where my pages are. And then a Spring View suffix. You notice the code assist that I have going on here? I don't get that with a regular Eclipse. So I'm saying that my views have a JSP suffix here. If you want an exhaustive list of all of the different properties that are available for you to set, take a look at the Spring Boot reference guide. And if you scroll all the way down to the appendix, one of the appendixes, this is Appendix A, this shows you all of the different properties that you can quickly and easily set. Okay, so there's all kinds of different properties for working with different technologies very, very easily. And if I were to go to the Spring, well, if I were to search for it, you would see that I would find the Spring View. I've scrolled past it here. So now, I'll just go back to my demo, retrieve it again, and you can see now it says Hello Ken from a JSP page. So what happened here is JSP is a different technology than Timeleaf, and you can see that this works differently here. If you want to understand the advantage of something like Timeleaf's natural templating, go ahead and open up the JSP file with a web browser. And this is something that a web developer would do from time to time. And you can see that the markup, shows up there, and the web developer would see this. And of course, they don't really want to see that. They would probably want to put in, something a little bit more suitable for a mockup. So again, what just happened? I removed the time leaf, so the time leaf view resolver went away. The controller still is returning a logical view name, and there is now an internal resource view resolver which was set up for me automatically. Used to be I'd have to do that by hand. And that is going to forward to the JSP based on the prefix and the suffix that I set up. And then of course the JSP is rendered. Now, that was about web pages. Let's say that I want to do some work with REST. REST capability is actually built into Spring MVC. What you do is you actually use domain objects as parameters and return values instead of using strings like I've done. And what you do is you mark the parameters with request body and the return values with response body. And actually, you've already seen me use response body when I was trying to get up and running really quick. And the nice thing about Spring MVC is it automatically handles all of the type conversions with XML and JSON based on the converters that are available on the class path. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and give you a little demonstration of how I can implement REST controllers in Spring MVC. What I'm going to do is create a couple of additional domain objects. And then you're going to see the automatic HTTP message conversion. I don't have to set up anything to make that happen. So back over here on my web application, let me go ahead and close some windows here. And I'll go back to my method here that just says hi, and let me go ahead and simplify this by taking the name out. And removing the model. And what I'm going to do is, tell you what, let me create a new domain object. In fact, I'll create a new package to store them in. I'll have demo.domain. You can follow along with this if you want. And I'll create a new class called team. This is going to be a sports team. And a team has, I'll just call it string. It has a name. It has a location. And has a mascot. And I will generate some getters and setters. And terrific. I have a team. A team needs players, so let me go ahead and create a domain object for players. And a team has a set of players. And to make my later coding a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of constructors here. Let me go ahead and create constructor using fields. I think that's pretty good. I'll put the location first. And I'll also make a default constructor. So I can construct this object just by passing in the location, name, and the set of players. For the player, I think I'll make a special constructor as well. Excellent. So I have a team and I have some players. Now what I'm going to do is when my application starts up, I want to create some data here. I'm going to create a private variable team to hold my team. And when my application starts up, I want to execute some logic as soon as it starts up. So I'm going to create a method called public void init, and I'm going to put post construct on it. So Spring will cause this to be executed when it starts, when the application starts. Tell you what, let's make a set of players. By making a hash set, diamond. Organize my imports. Players.add. And I'll just create a new player here. The player that I want to add has a name of Charlie Brown. And another player called Snoopy, our shortstop. And then I'll say team. Is populated like that. Now the reason I'm doing this is just so I can change this method to return a team, like so. I don't really need my model anymore. Let me go ahead and remove that. Doesn't hurt to have it in. And I'll go ahead and change this to a response body. And that's really all the change that I need to make. You can see that my Tomcat has already started up here. And when I go back over to my browser, I'm going to be able to call up hi. And you can see that what I have is an actual JSON response. So this is a RESTful response. You can see that I have my team with its name and location, and you can see I have a couple of players in there as well. So what just happened? My controller has been adjusted to return a domain object. It is no longer returning a logical view name, hello. It's not returning a page name. Spring MVC noticed that I have a response body. Now I could have used a REST controller just to show you what that looks like. Instead of having response body here, I could have used REST controller instead of a regular controller. And that would have worked just the same way. REST controller makes it so that Spring MVC always considers the response to be a response body. And it still works. Now, when that team object was returned, what Spring MVC did is it invoked the correct HTTP message converter. And it did it based on the requested format and also the jars that are on the class path. Now you might be thinking, it's interesting that it automatically did JSON by default. What if I wanted XML? Well, it's really no problem. All you have to do is annotate your domain classes with JAXB annotations, or you can use other XML technologies if you want to. The reason I went for JAXB is because JAXB is already built into Java SE. It has been for some time. Then what happens is I then have the option of asking for either XML or JSON. So now that I'm back here, let me go to my team object and let me put in a JAXB annotation. XML root element. This should be all that I need here. My application restarts, and when I go to the browser, now you can see that it gives me XML. Now the interesting thing about Spring MVC is that it allows me to request a different format on demand. I can say hi.json and I get JSON. Or if I were to say hi.xml, I would get XML. There are a number of ways that I can specify the format that I want to return back. I'm using the extension here. But if I were using a client, a RESTful client, like the simple REST client here that I have put in my Chrome, then what I can do is I could specify that I want this to be a GET request, and I accept application XML. And then I get XML back. But if I were to say that I expect JSON, I get JSON back. And other types are supported too. XML and JSON just happen to be probably the most commonly requested format types. Okay, so XML or JSON is returned based on the requested format.